Welcome to Founders Marketing Compass. My name is Etgar Shpivak. With my experience as a CEO, a co-founder, and a marketer, I'm interviewing founders and investors to learn how to build healthy, lasting relationships between startup founders and their marketing team. Today, I'm hosting Gadi Eliashiv, the co-founder and CEO of Singular. Hi, Gadi.
Hi, great being here. Thanks for the time.
Thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this podcast. Happy if you can tell our listeners a bit more about yourself and about your journey.
I'll try and go back and not too far back. I grew up in Israel, in the center of the country. If I'm being forced to describe, I say Petah Tikva, but then people make fun of me. And then as soon as I was, out of the house, kind of lived in Tel Aviv, sort of the classic Israeli kind of moving to the center of Tel Aviv. After a while, I relocated to San Francisco. I've been there for 7 years, and then I've been living in Austin, Texas for the last 3 years. So I've been in the U.S. for over 10 years. I recently became a citizen, which is exciting. I'm married, 2 kids, and that's kind of where we are. And I guess my background, I've been coding since I was super young. I don't know, I always found computers fascinating. It's funny, I was doing a lot of hacking and reverse engineering when I was young, and then kind of naturally got into the elite intelligence forces in the Israeli military, 8200, and did about 7 years in the army. And then I joined this company called Onavo, which was a bunch of people I knew from the military, and I had a lot of fun. And eventually Onavo was acquired by Facebook and became Facebook Israel. So it's pretty cool. Felt like we were part of something meaningful there. And then right before the acquisition, I left to start my own company. I always knew I wanted to start a company, and that's how I started Singular. And if I had to describe Singular really quickly, I'll say that we help growth teams solve really complicated data challenges. The kind of data challenges I'm talking about are attribution, marketing analytics, ETL, and essentially anything that has to do with marketing and data, I suppose. And maybe as a side note, I also like building physical things as well. So I was working on building houses and furniture, and I built a deck. I built this thing behind me, and I'm also trying to develop more hobbies like fixing up old cars. So I bought a pickup truck, and I'm trying to replace the engine. So trying to do things not just in the virtual realm, but also, I guess, physical.
I will say that I heard personally lots of good stuff on Singular, and I know that many people in the marketing industry love using your solution, and especially a lot of your customer success team.
That's great to hear. I appreciate it.
So let's jump in. And you coming as a CEO with no marketing background, you just did tons of coding and super smart. And now you have your marketing team and you tell them, I want to achieve this and that. And my first question would be, how do you, as a non-marketer, define the KPI that you want your marketing team will achieve?
Yeah. So I guess it depends, because, based on your question, we're talking about a history of like 10 years of building companies, right? And so in the beginning, I knew nothing. And I think my goals were, we're gonna bring somebody that did some marketing, and they came from a company kind of similar to ours, and then we'll do what they said. And that's a really bad idea, because you have to become, I'm not saying an expert, but I think you have to know enough about what other companies are doing and get deep into what are the key KPIs that you want. And I think that's where investors could help you. Whatever answer I would give you 10 years ago is definitely not the answer I'd give you today. But then I think, very quickly you realize what you need to measure. Today, the things that I ask my marketing team to deliver, and most of my go-to-market team, is there's 2 terms we use. One of them is, we call it stage 2 ARR. And I'll explain in a second what it means. But basically, it's a sales qualified opportunity, which means that I don't care about leads they drive. I don't care about people signing up to the webinar. I don't care about website visits. The KPI that they need to hit is pipeline, and not just any pipeline, but an actual opportunity with a company that has ARR attached to it, and they have a number to hit. Now that's, obviously I do care about signups and demo requests and webinar participants, etc. These are all sort of early indicators. And for me, the main KPI is the actual pipeline to drive. And I know that, that's what's going to enable us to hit our goals, because whenever we have pipeline, I know that the product's really good. I know our sales team knows how to do it. I know we can onboard customers successfully. I know they stay for many, many years. And so it's almost like the main thing I need to solve for every quarter as the goals increases is getting more pipeline. So that's sort of number one. And then I guess the other thing that we measure is not just the what was sales qualified, but also close won. And this is a good balance because sometimes if you have a regional team, you might have sellers in certain regions that are more, let's say they just start out and they might qualify a bit more, overzealously, and like you get more inflated pipeline than you think, then none of it closes. Or maybe, your win rate is 50% and suddenly in this particular region, that rep has a win rate of 15%. You're like, okay, maybe they're qualifying just too much. Maybe it doesn't make sense. So that's why we also have the close won ARR as the actual metric as well that you can kind of balances out. So these are two high-level KPIs. And you're kind of asking, a CEO, what do I ask my marketing team? It's basically pipeline and pipeline that closes.
And if I continue on this question, how did your KPI evolve through the year? Like, if I ask, like, what were your KPI when you just started, and then how it evolved until it's reached to this situation?
I think the early stages, we were a lot more busy with executing basic tactics. So like we had this big event that we were preparing for, or maybe it was our own event that we're hosting. And then, the marketing team was telling me how many registrants we got and how many of them were like relevant people. Or we had a webinar and we were like really obsessed about how many people attend the webinar. And I think it's important because in the beginning, when you build your channels, you need to make sure that the fundamentals work. You can't just be the CEO that says, I need pipeline that closes. I mean, you can if it works out and you have all the perfect leaders in place. But more times than not, you need to know the details that help that. So, being able to assess in a more granular fashion in the beginning was helpful so we could build repeatable programs, right? So now I know that every webinar I do, I get a certain amount of participants, but I know how much pipeline it translates into, right? I know how many organic demo requests I should expect every month. I know how many content downloads I'm going to get for certain pieces of articles. I know if we do an event, how many meetings I expect. So these were the early metrics. And I think we evolved from, it's almost like a funnel, right? So you evolve from top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel metrics over time. So that's, one way where things evolve. And I guess, the other thing we looked at is also which of these are sort of baseline metrics and which of these are more long-term, right? So like baseline is, I know I need to deliver a certain amount of programs every month or every quarter so I can deliver results. Long-term, we kind of try to shake up the plan a bit and say, okay, we have this new products coming out. We have this new market we want to go into. We have this, change that we want to make sure we capitalize on. And then what you try to do is you also try to analyze what you could do less of and still hit your numbers. So it's almost like trying to analyze the incrementality of your actions. Like, what if I didn't do 15 different pieces of content every quarter, but maybe 5, right? It would free up some time. I could do something else. So that's, I guess, another evolution of not only setting the goals, but also trying to measure how many activities are we doing and try and change things up a bit.
How do you balance those short-term with your very long-term strategy that you communicate to your investors, that you communicate to the board? This, I want this and this market share. I want to be on this quarter in Gartner research.
Well, maybe we'll start with the communication. I think that it can always be better, honestly. Like everybody feels like they want to hear me more. I need to talk in more company all hands and communicate that better. But I feel like one of the early lessons I got was build a really strong executive team. And I think we did that. We have some great executives that really helped me not only delegate most of the work and, I kind of choose what I want to work on, but it's also the fact that there's a group of people I could go to and communicate really quickly and efficiently. And I think there's good alignment that comes from them, and then they will propagate to the rest of the org. So, I'm lucky enough where I could talk to, let's say, my president, who used to be our CRO, now is a president, and he kind of owns all of go-to-market. So when I work with him and I work with our VP of product and I work with my co-founders, we're able to quickly discuss, okay, what's the strategy for, let's say, 2025, right? And we start with the high-level goals, and we kind of figure out how we break down by each product and by each region, and we analyze how much pipeline we need. And I think that it all starts with where we want to be, but then we also do the work to kind of break it down into individual tasks. And I think that immediately helps see where, the sort of short-term versus long-term. I would say the short-term is more the baseline. It's like the things I know I have to do this quarter or next quarter. And then long-term is if I need to plan a year and a half out. And I'm asking myself, how do I get to a point where I've developed this new channel that's going to drive this much pipeline? What do I need to do to get there, right? So like I need to have a budget for it. I need to prove success at a smaller scale. I need to hire people to do that. I need the product to be live or whatever we're counting on, right? Maybe some sort of a release. So I feel like communicating with your exec team is important. The other aspect is communicating to the company. And I think that has, it's just as important, I would say, because eventually they have to hear it from you. So like I could talk to my executive all day long, but it wouldn't necessarily translate as well to everybody in the company. So they need to hear it from me as well. And I think that helps a lot, both with morale, but also be able to execute. And then with investors, I guess it's a whole different rhythm, because I feel like I have one-on-ones with some of them, the more active board members, but I usually do the update in a board setting. And the goal in board meetings, at least my goal, what I was taught, is like never surprise your board members. So if there's anything major coming up, you want them to be prepped ahead of time. And the board meetings are usually there just to agree, which doesn't mean they're not valuable. They're very valuable, but you don't want to surprise them. So it's just how you manage the board. It's slightly different, I think, of a setting than when you talk to the company and you talk internally. So hopefully that kind of answered your question.
How do you measure the effectiveness of your marketing effort?
It's a massive topic, and actually everybody in the company would make fun of me for sticking to the data. I'm a data-driven guy. I think, well, everybody likes to be data-driven. I hope I'm data-driven enough, but certainly I'm very technical. And over the years, we actually built our own custom attribution for this. So we basically take every opportunity that we have in our CRM and we try to understand how it got created. What are the touch points that affected it? And we have a few models for that, but the main model is an MTA model, multi-touch attribution. And basically, in really simple terms, it will look at every opportunity that we have, right? Let's say we have a deal with Apple and we started an opportunity with Apple. It will look at the last, let's say 90 days, this could be adjusted. And we'll try and find what have we done against that account, right? And Apple and all of its various employees. And we'll try to look for, did they attend the webinar? Did we meet them at an event? Did the salesperson got a lead from the partnership team? They come as an inbound for demos. A lot of times that happens. And then it's going to do some sort of weights on all these touch points in order to come up with this multi-touch, right? Now, there's obviously different algorithms we can apply, and there's different customizations, and there's things that you got to fix. So for example, every one of our demo requests is also going to have an SDR reaching out because they're responding to the demo request. So you got to neutralize that, make sure that we're not, marking everything as an SDR touchpoint. But essentially, after doing all that cleanup, we get a dashboard that shows us how each of the activities and channels that we run in the company contributes to pipeline, right? So that's one way of measuring marketing effectiveness. That's the sort of mathematical, scientific side. The other side is where you do things because there's a certain belief that they help you, right? So for example, we do a ton of content and thought leadership. And I'm not sure if all these webinars are necessary, but I do know, and you hear that eventually it really helps us create a brand. It helps us create awareness. And so in a lot of those areas, I feel like it's harder to measure, but it's still something that contributes. So we're trying to do a mix, but I feel like the company's gotten really good at, I was so proud when I see people, when they present to me or even internally, they kind of go through the Tableau dashboard and they pull numbers. And so it's like, okay, we're way more data driven than we were before. So I'm very happy. And we've been doing it for many years now. So it's working really well for us.
So I normally ask this question, and I think what is unique in asking it for you is the fact that you're one of the leading measurement for your clients. So, for many of your clients, their answer, how do you measure your marketing result, will be, I'm using Singular. So just to understand, not being in the cobbler children go barefoot. So try to understand and actually emphasize on what you said about how do you measure your brand activities when you're doing this thought leadership, when you're doing, it can be for conferences or giving any sponsorship. Is there a way to actually put it into this MMM model or whatever, like marketing mix model with different three-letter? Everyone talk about it, and this is one of the hottest topic in the industry, and I think that you're doing an amazing job for your clients to measure it. But how do you measure, if I go specifically with all those brand activities and try to put, I know it will give me a value 1 year, 2 years from now, and this is okay because people will be familiar with Singular. But is there a way that you even try to measure this, or everything is I assume my audience is there, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do my best, and I hope it will work.
I think it's probably a mix. So I think it's a great answer. And it's funny because a lot of times I feel like the level of measurement we do for our customers who have marketing budgets that are probably 10 times, not 100 times the size of our budget, they're way more sophisticated in their measurement, and rightfully so. They should be. Hopefully we'll grow into those marketing budgets over the years. But when you deal with some of these Fortune 100 companies, it's just like, it's insane. So I can't say we're at the level of sophistication of measurement that we offer in our product for all these aspects. But I would say that it's slightly different as well from sort of a consumer business and a B2B business in I guess, two aspects. One, in the last few years, especially with COVID, we kind of got lucky because a lot of the activities that we wanted to do and we kind of felt the hunch that we needed to do also happened to be in a digital setting where you could do some sort of tracking. So, I'm not necessarily showing a billboard to a bunch of people and wondering if it works. I'm actually doing a webinar. And if I do a webinar, I could see who's signing up and I can see if they keep consuming my content. So I guess the approach we took is we chose a bunch of activities that we thought would be valuable, and we were able to both kind of invest in it because we believed in it, but also start to see results that were directly measurable, which was awesome. But I will say that these activities on their own, they're not going to directly attribute a ton of revenue. And we keep doing them. And why do we keep doing them? Because I think that we have seen now in a very large number of cases where people literally recognize us because of this activity, right? Like, for example, one thing we've done in the last few years was it's actually funny. When we started, we were less known. Like, our investors used to call us the best kept secret, and it was sort of an insult to say, like, you don't need to be a secret. People need to know your brand, right? And we entered a space that already had, like, the attribution space already had some household names. And we came in with a different approach, with a different product. We kind of merged into attribution, and we weren't as known. And we were able to turn that around in a few areas. And I think, you mentioned the support. We've been hearing people raving about the service we provide, how powerful the product is. But the other key aspect was thought leadership. And this is one of those areas where you get enough positive indicators every once in a while that you feel like it's worth keeping investing in. And I'll give you an example. Like, it might be a silly example. I was once in a conference and people didn't even know my name, but they're like, you're the guy from the webinars on privacy. Like, we've watched all your content. It's amazing. And it's literally people walking up to me, and they work at the largest customers. Some of them are prospects, some of them are singular customers, but you're like, wow, this really reaches a lot of people and they care about it. So I think there's a unique opportunity to combine creating a brand with doing a lot of things that we like talking about technical things and measurement and privacy. So, we kind of got lucky there. I think it was a good time and we took advantage of that. But other than that, we have a certain amount of investment in events that we have no idea if it returns the yield. But that if you don't do that investment, you might cause some damage. So, for example, I remember we had those events where if you have a lot of your customers there, they kind of expect you to take them out, to have a party, to do all sorts of things. So I feel like, there's enough sort of common sense on things you should invest in. But yeah, it's not as scientific as I want it to be. There are, a lot of our activities are measurable directly, but I probably don't know their true value, the complete value, I would say.
What is the one mistake that you see founder commonly do when they're working with their marketing team?
The thing I've seen myself do multiple times, and I assume others do as well, and I've seen some friends do the same, is not having the right leaders, or maybe not having the right leaders for the right time. So, maybe one of the best lessons I've had over the years is like the much of a difference you can have from a different leader. And it's literally to the point where you might have problems that you think are just simply unsolvable. It seems so difficult. All the signals are like, oh, we're in this position in the market and this is impossible. And people are saying X, Y, and Z, and the team is not excited and whatever. And then a leader changes and all these problems that seemed impossible just go away. And you're like, oh my God, this was all like, I don't want to say gaslighting, but it's almost like you gaslight yourself. You're like, oh, this is impossible. All this stuff is really complicated. And then you bring the right leader and everything seems possible. So I think that's a mistake that people can make, I guess, in general. And I guess for founders, especially ones that need to build their marketing team, you kind of have to always look at what are other companies at your stage are doing, and what their team looks like, and whether your leaders are up to speed. And a great way to do that, by the way, is if you have good investors, they will help you. Like we have No West is one of our investors, and they have a phenomenal service team for their portfolio companies. And they have like a CMO that works with all their companies. And that is an amazing resource because they bring you the benchmarks of what you don't know, right? They'll show you, okay, all these other companies we have in our portfolio, they could also survey hundreds of companies. This is how their marketing team looks like. This is what their leader does. This is how much money they're spending. This is their return on investment. This is the percentage of their budget that goes to marketing. So I think, having the right leader and getting help to figure out the right leader is.
So we talk about leadership, and it's amazing that your investors really help you, but the one that need to hire your marketing leadership. So trying to understand from the founder perspective, and what are the top 3 qualities that you're looking when you're hiring your marketing lead?
Well, I gotta I gotta be honest and say I've hired multiple times and I failed in a lot of cases. So maybe take my advice from with a grain of salt. I think it's hard. I think that I always ask myself, if did we bring the wrong person or did we bring the right person in the wrong time? And sometimes I think it's the latter. I think that we are such a different company today than when we were 2 years ago or 5 years ago, and it requires different leaders. And I guess, it's hard to say precisely what I would look for, but I would look for the things that I think are going to be meaningful for success in the next 2 years and not forever, right? So like, I'm okay with the fact that people will only be valuable for a certain period of the company. I think it's, kind of the well-known concept of, you need people that could help you scale to the next level, but they're not going to be there all the way to the IPO. And so trying to figure out whether this person can take me to the next level is what I'm trying to focus on. Now, obviously, there's a lot of personal attributes that I'm interested in. For example, am I going to like working with this person? This is my pet peeve, like, can they admit a mistake? Like, I hate when people bullshit me and they don't, if someone admits a mistake, I'll be okay with it. But if they're trying to make it like it wasn't a mistake, that would just drive me nuts, right? So like things that I know would be a fit for me or the people I work with. I do care about people that could handle data and be able to look at information and decide based on that, especially for a leader. I think they're really important. It's really important. And then in the past, we always look for people that understood our space. The funny thing is, it's the best leaders we've had, and this is maybe a curveball here, but like the best leaders we've had in marketing in the past, I mean, it kind of changed, but in the past, were actually not marketers. Like one of the best leaders we had was our chief architect. The guy was super talented. He went on to start a company and recently sold his company. He was really a phenomenal person that grew up in Singapore for many years. And we moved him from an engineering job to manage marketing. And he did one of the biggest transformations this team has ever seen. He did the best execution, the best delivery, the best creation of a new channel. So I don't know. Our marketing leadership journey has been weird. It hasn't been like classic textbook marketers that succeeded in the role. It's been different people.
It's actually very interesting, and this is not the first time that I'm hearing those cases of this CTO that became CMO. And trying to elaborate on this question because I think it's really interesting. What made you think with your chief architect that he's the good fit for your marketing role?
I think I knew a few facts. I knew he was really smart. I knew that he knew the product. He understood the business because he spent a while also being close to business. So he definitely had a really good understanding of our business. And, I got lucky because that guy was effectively an entrepreneur material. He went on to start a company. So definitely had it in him. And he was very capable of managing people and getting things done. And I think that having someone who could constantly evaluate what they do, logically make decisions on what we need to do, be able to choose what not to do. Like actually, one thing I see consistently with marketing teams is you talk to them and you get overwhelmed with like a million things they want to do. And they're like, oh, we want to do 15,000 content pieces. We're going to do 15,000 events. We're going to do 100 different webinars. And they're not pausing and stopping and asking, wait, what's most important? What are my priorities? Am I moving the needle? Is this actually improving the metrics? And I think he did that instinctively. Like because he didn't have the bias to just execute on the things he knows because he didn't know any of that. So he would just he would pause and say, what is the most important thing to do right now? And I think that attribute helped him a lot. Now, I do think that experience matters and you hit a glass ceiling, right? And then you need the next leader to take you further. But he was definitely very instrumental in taking us from, I wouldn't say 0 to 1, but I don't know, from 1 to 10 on an imaginary scale of the marketing team being built. But he's not the person to take us from 10 to 100, right? and that's a different person. So, but a lot of these attributes were what we needed at the time.
What's the most surprising lesson that you have learned as a founder?
It's more of a personal thing, I'll say. It's surprising about myself, maybe. I've been in the military, and then I've been in a few startups, and before Singular, I've been in a novel the longest. And everything I knew about startups was that the core team was like the most critical thing ever. And I remember that, in Singular we have, and it's quite amazing. Like we have this unreasonably great employee retention. Like literally there's still people in the company staying with us for 8, 9, 10 years, which is insane. Uh, um, I remember the first time we had people that were kind of old timers, and it was like a few years ago. People had been with us for, I don't know, 5 years, and they left. And I thought the world's going to end. I thought, okay, all this core talent, the people that I recruited, they used to work for me in previous companies or the military, or used to be the founding team, not the founding team, but like the first engineers. I thought the world's going to end. And I think it was sort of a maturity thing we were so used to the fact that we can retain this talent forever that for them leaving, the world really didn't end. And it's funny because it was almost like a different phase where you used to feel more safe being surrounded by all these people you knew. And then they go and you're like on your own. You're like, okay, we're going to go do something else. This is you started this company, you're going to stay with it, right? And then you almost have to grow up. You're like, okay, I'm not with the people I know anymore. It's like new people, and are we going to be okay? Now, obviously, I have my co-founders who are amazing, and they're in it. They're in the same boat as I am. But I think that was surprising. That I thought, it's going to be really bad, and it didn't. We're fine. We're here. We're better. We're more scalable. I miss all those people. They're all amazing, and they would be a phenomenal value add. But a company evolves, a company grows, and it looks different. And I think maybe that's more of a maturity thing. So I don't know. It might not be surprising to a lot of people, but I think a lot of young founders, when they start, all they hear about is the team, the team, the team, and after 10 years, you can't expect people to be in the same place, even though we have some people who are still here. It's just something you have to go through. So that was maybe a moment I had to go through and evolve.
So if you want to help, and I know that other founders are listening to us, what's a common misconception about running a startup you would like to debunk?
I don't know if it's still a misconception, but I think it's something you learn. When people think about startups, they think a lot about this perfect execution with the smartest people, and you have to be experienced. And a lot of it is true, especially if you kind of go to IPO and all that stuff. But the thing that you realize when you do startups is there's so much randomness and luck involved. Like you could sell your company this amazing multiple if the right people and the right fit suddenly emerges. And even if your revenue is minuscule, you can have this amazing outcome, or you can have an incredibly tough time. And despite having all these things aligned. And so it's not an excuse not to have perfect execution. You should strive for having really good execution. You should put really smart people in place. You should always, as a CEO, kind of fire yourself and let other people do the work as much as you can. But maybe one of the things that new startup founders, not existing ones, I think is, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to focus so much on all this execution, go to market, hiring, and scaling. And you got to remember that if you're looking for a strategic outcome or some outcome for your shareholders, there's a lot of randomness until you become a really big company. And then I guess you're being measured by your metrics, but there's so much randomness. And so don't underestimate the fact that it might be just equally as important to who you're having drinks with and who you're building a relationship with, and then doing the right executions. I think that's important. And that's a lesson that I had to force myself to learn because I've been so sort of heads down into the business, not looking left or right. And I think that's a mistake. And it's not even just all about acquisitions, about we bought a company, and that buying a company, it was very serendipitous. Like I met the founder at this event and I had this strategy, but I just didn't know this company existed. And so it works both ways. And this was a very strategic acquisition for us. So, things like that can happen. So maybe that's sometimes a misconception.
What would it be if you can give one piece of advice to your younger self when you just build the Singular?
I would focus 1,000% on the go-to-market super early. Like take every learning I know today to build a scalable SaaS business and apply it on day one. For example, we took years until we built our sort of PLG motion in the product. It's been amazing for us. Like it's been explosive in like number of customers. And for the very first 5 years, we didn't do that. It was stupid. Like I think we just didn't know enough about go-to-market. We built an exceptional product. We got amazing enterprises to use us, but I would focus very aggressively on go-to-market. There'd probably be other tips I would give myself. I think, given you have an idea already and you started, and you have a company, that would be my advice. If you are still thinking about starting a company, there would be other advice that I'd give you. But if you have a startup and you're like just Gadi in day one of Singular, I would lean so heavily in go to market and not as much as I did on the tech or the product, which I personally really enjoy, but I think I would have brought all my learnings and do things differently from day one.
And for the last question in this very interesting interview, which question did I need to ask, but I didn't?
I guess, it's been a pleasure talking to you. So I guess, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. And also, I guess in general, I think there's interesting discussions that might be worth bringing up with people. Like, how do they manage sales and marketing friction? I think it's a common thing that happens, right? And you got to manage that. I think you asked me how to find a great marketing leader. I'd love to hear someone that has the answer. I think dealing with competitors is interesting. And then also talking about pricing and go-to-market structure, like, do you do a PLG? Do you do a sales-led company? I think these are interesting areas that probably worth digging into in the future. So, yeah.
So, Gadi, I had a great time talking with you, and I really enjoyed them. And thank you so much.